Hello and welcome to an e-invoicing and live reporting integration presentation with Oracle ERP Cloud to Avalara's e-invoicing and live reporting connectivity. My name is Govind Jayant. I have been working integrating products with Oracle ERP Cloud and Oracle EBS with various products, including taxes for sales and use tax, VAT, and now e-invoicing. I've also worked on some integrations with banking applications. So today we are going to be talking about what e-invoicing in general is, and then how we have built the global tax connector connecting Oracle ERP Cloud with e-invoicing and live reporting product of Avalara, which is a global tax compliance product. So typically, more and more countries are now mandating that there be an invoice sent over to the tax authorities. Electronic invoicing is no longer just a digital version of the invoice sent over to the customers, but it is about being able to send invoices in a structured format to the tax authorities and to the customers. So once an invoice is generated out of the accounts receivables for an outbound invoice, there is a custom integration that we have built that takes that invoice data to Avalara's e-invoicing and live reporting product. There are some format conversions and encryptions that happen along the way on that document. And you will also see that this invoice can be monitored either on the Oracle accounts receivables side as to how it progresses through the flow until it is accepted by the tax authority. You can also see some acknowledgement messages coming back, and including in some countries, there is a QR code generated, and then those are brought back and stamped in Oracle as well. Once Avalara e-invoicing and live reporting product receives this electronic invoice from Oracle ERP Cloud through the connector, it sends it to the tax authorities according to the mandates for the various countries that are specific to the transaction. And then it has the capacity to send that over to the business partners, which are your customers. Any acknowledgement from the tax authority, including any validation exceptions, are also brought back to Avalara's e-invoicing module and back to the connector and reflected as status on Oracle accounts receivables invoice. The Avalara connector for e-invoicing is a central module that is hosted in Oracle Cloud infrastructure. It is one single global tax connector for various tax products, such as sales and use tax and VAT and e-invoicing, and exemption certificate management. The ELR connector, which is part of the global tax connector, has a very robust user interface called onboarding, which is both a technical and a functional user interface. The technical component of the user interface allows our customers to establish various mandates and then assign those mandates to their billing customers according to the countries where the invoicing is to occur. In addition, the centralized module also has the capability of certain validations, such as making sure that a purchase order in Italy is of a certain length. So those kinds of validations can be built into the connector. So once an accounts receivables invoice is created in Oracle, there is a central module called Collaboration Messaging Framework provided by Oracle Fusion, that then consumes that invoice and sends it to the connector to be sent to ELR, the e-invoicing and live reporting product. Which then transmits it to the tax authorities. It can be delivered via a PEPL network and delivered to the B2B and B2C customers and delivered to certain service providers that we are integrated with. Let's take a look at how a transaction flows for an outbound invoice. When an accounts receivables invoice is created, it goes to CMK, Collaboration Messaging Framework product of Oracle, where you would run or schedule a process called Generate and Transfer XML, which has a number of parameters that you can provide, such as customer number range, date range, or a transaction number range. That then sends that to the connector in a structured UBL 2.1 format, where mandate mapping occurs according to the country on that transaction. There are data validations and enrichments we will talk about a little bit later in the presentation. And once that occurs, it sends it over to ELR through our standard REST API, which then sends it to the tax authorities according to the mandate. For every transaction that goes over to the tax authorities, the acceptance response or acknowledgement messages are brought back through the chain and recorded in accounts receivable. So let's take a look at some transactions as they occur. Here you see an accounts receivables invoice where you will provide a tax registration number. This is a VAT invoice. Once VAT is calculated on an invoice, it's now ready for processing for e-invoicing. At the beginning, if you look at the summary of this AR invoice, you have certain fields that tell you the procession of the progress of the document. Here you see an XML delivery status that is initially blank because it's not yet picked up by CMK. Then you would run or schedule the generate and transfer XML process. And this is where you can actually see some fields that you can populate for picking up the transactions. As soon as CMK picks up the transaction, the status on your accounts receivables screen changes to delivery in progress. And we will come back to this screen a few times to illustrate that just by staying in Oracle accounts receivables, you can monitor the progress of the transaction. Once Collaboration Messaging Framework has transmitted the document to the connector, the status changes to delivery succeeded. And here we have access within Oracle ERP Cloud, the module itself, which can show the outbound messages as well as the original document and transformed messages. Some of the transformations can be converting the invoice type to a certain identifier that is acceptable to a certain tax authority. In the connector, one can see transaction details for the documents that are outbound as well as the documents that are inbound for accounts payables, supplier invoices that are coming back to the connector. We will see that in just a bit. So in addition to the transaction details, you can actually also see the e-invoicing status messages, such as data, the messages transmitted to e-invoicing and live reporting, as well as to tax authorities, and any response keys that come back. The delivery status, once it has been transmitted to the tax authorities, changes to accepted in Oracle accounts receivable. The e-invoicing and live reporting product also allows us to be able to send attachments from accounts receivable invoice to the tax authorities. And here you can view in the ELR product the outbound messages as well as attachments. The representation from Oracle to the ELR product is shown here, where you can view how the data from Oracle invoice has been transformed to match the mandate requirements of the tax authority. Let's take a look at the accounts payable inbound flow. So here we have a supplier invoice coming in to ELR, and ELR can actually receive supplier invoices from both within the country as well as outside the country. Once that happens, the invoice is again transmitted to the connector. The connector has capability of either having a scheduled process that can receive invoices from ELR, or you can run it ad hoc, and it then transmits it back to CMK, which then processes the standard Oracle payables invoicing import process. Once a supplier invoice comes into ELR, you are noticing here that it is in the status of pending. And once a transaction is picked up by the connector, this is the screen you're looking at, which is a process scheduler. And we can schedule the process as frequently as you want. Once that happens, the status in ELR changes to completed. And the transaction detail window in the connector can actually show you that it's transmitted the document back to CMK. You get, therefore, a live status of every transaction that is flowing through the integration. Here you can also see that it's sent to a PEPL network, the invoice date, and the business partners that are involved in the transaction. Inbound transactions coming in, which are either acknowledgement messages or the supplier invoices, can also be viewed in CMK's transaction history, along with any transformations that have taken place from supplier invoice to the format that is specific to your Oracle ERP Cloud accounts payables module. This shows a standard invoice payables import process. Invoices come in as not validated initially, and then you can either schedule again the invoice validation process, or you can validate it ad hoc. And that's really the last step in the inbound e-invoicing process. Let's take a look at some validations that are performed either in the connector or in ELR. So we talked about a PO number validation. There are some mandatory validations on top of this that e-invoicing live reporting module can perform before the document goes over to the tax authority. One example of a transformation that can occur is an invoice type of an invoice or a credit memo in Oracle ERP Cloud gets transformed to a certain ID that is understandable to the tax authority. We also saw a transaction detail visibility in the connector, as well as status visibility back in Oracle. You can find more information about the Avalara E-Invoicing for Oracle connector and the e-invoicing and live reporting product itself on the Oracle Cloud Marketplace. Please post any questions in the chat. Thank you.